Welcome to the Roost News, the place for all things volunteer. I am Lillian S. Co-Lead for the Roost News, and with me is Michelle Becote Jackson, Vice President for Volunteerism and Services, State Community Engagement. Thank you, Michelle, for joining the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, we have a lot to discuss. I'm excited. Michelle Becote Jackson would think me interviewing Michelle Becote Jackson, how wonderful it is for you to join the Roost News podcast. But before we get into the volunteerism part of this program, I would like for you to share a little bit about Michelle, how long you've been employed with AARP. Why AARP as your place of employment? What's your passion?
Great. Thank you, Lillian. I'm equally as in awe of being interviewed by the amazing Lillian S. So we will both be starstruck throughout this interview. But anyway, thank you for that question. Believe it or not, I have been with AARP. In 2 weeks, it will be 2 full years. So It has gone incredibly fast. Why AARP? Toward the second half, or I'll say maybe that mid-range area in my career, I got to a point where it was incredibly important to find jobs or do any kind of work that allowed me to do well by doing good, right? So being able to find an organization that allows you to do just that, nobody does that better than AARP. From taking care of their employees in such a meaningful way, from benefits and supports, to doing this incredible work nationwide in the space of volunteerism, I could not find an organization that better met my personal mantra than AARP. So it was an easy decision for me, and I'm so glad that they chose me to take on this important work.
Great. Well, we're glad they chose you also. So let's get started about volunteerism. Now, I know when I think about the Office of Volunteer Engagement, there are a lot of materials out there, but one thing that sticks out in my mind is that it is the hub. It's the place for resources, consultation, training, whatever the state volunteers need and the staff need to work with the 50+ population, you have it. So tell us the story about OVE and what is it all about?
Well, I tell people, what does OVE do? And OVE's sole purpose for being is to serve those who serve, right? So that includes serving the staff that support the many, many volunteers. And what does that look like? You've highlighted so much of the work. It is being that consultant for staff in order to better and deepen engagement with volunteers. It's making sure that almost 50,000 volunteers have the resources and supports they need to do their job. Volunteering is giving of free time and service. So the best thing we could possibly do as a team is make that easy on everybody. Mm-hmm. So that means wrapping them up with that hub of resources, everything from training to reading resources to direct service calls for everything from I need help for the portal, I need help drafting a letter, I need some great ideas on recruitment. All of those things are things that fall well within the Office of Volunteer Engagement. And we serve at the behest of our volunteers and those who serve them. So our goal is to make sure that we do just that. We call ourselves the wise friend and fierce defenders of volunteers. That's exactly what we do. Because we know we could not do the incredible work of AARP in advancing its social impact mission without having volunteers really at the forefront of that work. So it is our goal to make sure that they are fully prepared to do that and more. And it's also our goal to learn from our volunteers to make sure that we're doing that better and in a more meaningful way. So that's kind of what we focus on in a larger scale. Obviously, a lot more tactical things, but just knowing our reason for being here is for all of you.
Great. Well, thank you. And then let's go a little bit deeper. I know that there's Will Stoner, and most people have heard that name if they have not met Will Stoner. And then there are 3 regional advisors. And I must give a shout out to Tara Schaefer, who is the advisor for the Roost News podcast. And we thank her for her leadership with this. But Will Stoner, regional advisors, what's the role with these individuals?
So the regional advisors truly serve as the strategic thought partners and tactical thinkers and supports of all of their regions. Now, what's interesting to note is while there are 6 regions, there are 3 advisors. So each of them support 2 regions, which means the staff and volunteers of anywhere from 16 to 19 different states.
Wow.
So that makes them incredibly busy.
Yes, yes.
Incredibly busy. And so their work centers around being, again, that thought partner with the states and the state staff that support volunteers. They do a lot of consultations. They do a lot of trainings, if not themselves. They arrange that. They participate as a part of volunteer recruitment plans and even handle escalated volunteer issues. So their role is so vast and wide, I couldn't begin to share it all, and I certainly don't want to undersell it. But I do hear quite frequently from our states that they could not do the work they do with volunteers without having their regional advisor partner. And I 100% agree with them. They are a trusted resource in supporting volunteers and all things volunteers need and do. And so they have an amazing job, and we're grateful for the 3 amazing regional advisors we have. And we had a wonderful interim there too that just knows this work and knows how to support states who support their volunteers in a meaningful way.
All right. Well, when people hear the name Will Stoner, what is his role with the advisors?
Will is actually one of 3 directors on the Office of Volunteer Engagement team. He serves as director of outreach, innovation, and training.
Okay.
So he oversees those regional advisors, as well as the advisor that oversees all of our AARP chapters.
Oh, okay.
So he has a pretty wide-reaching job. And what he does is make sure that those advisors have what they need to support, their respective states and chapters.
Okay, great.
He also is a huge thought partner, not only for our state work, but for volunteer programs enterprise-wide and ways that we can do more, different, better all together.
Yes, okay, great. Well, as the volunteers and staff listen, I want them, especially if there are any new volunteers and staff, they'll understand the process that AARP has for making sure that the Office of Volunteer Engagement works effectively, and it's most effectively led by all of these individuals. So
Right.
as we look at, you've given some overview of the Office of Volunteer Engagement, what the advisors do. So I want to circle back around to you because you said 2 years tomorrow, I think, or somewhere.
2 years and 2 weeks, November 15th.
2 years and 2 weeks. Congratulations, Michelle.
Thank you. They said it wouldn't last, right? Here I am.
Yes. Well, that's good because the next part of this conversation, I wanted to talk a little bit about, even though you have only been here for that length of time, and to you it's probably a long time, to others it might be a short time, but have you thought about short-term, long-term goals and the progression that you're going through? Any successes you would like to share from your time being with AARP?
Yes, and yes, right. It's been a wonderful 2 years and lots of going on. I'm sure you can relate. I joined at what I'd like to call the trailing of the pandemic. So I was remote for several months before coming in person.
Right.
The world was quite different 2 years ago,
Yes,
right,
yes.
than it is now. So I came in a space where we really just had to figure out how to continue the great work that was done by my predecessor on working through this pandemic. And I think kind of coming out of it was probably almost as challenging as going into it, because now people are different. Right?
Yes.
Volunteers are different. Everyone's different after going through an incredibly challenging time in their professional and very much personal lives. And so the first part of my onboarding was literally helping us navigate those choppy waters of COVID and life as we transition out.
Yes.
Thankfully, we have made it through. I think it's going to be something we live with, not anything we ever put in our rearview mirror. But it allows me to focus on now, where do we go from here, right? So a lot of the work that we are looking at doing is focusing on just that. Talks about intentional and strategic growth. How do we do that meaningfully and with an eye on diversity? how do we enrich and engage the experience for our volunteers now that you're through that and we are back in community in a meaningful way? And we are seeing great growth in that space, which is
Yes,
one of the
yes,
successes.
yes.
We're seeing huge growth year over year. With new volunteers joining us. How do we make sure that we onboard in a meaningful way and provide supports and engagements to the new as well as to our retained volunteers? We're also looking at modernizing systems, and that's not just dealing with the portal. It's also how do you access volunteerism activities and opportunities on our landing pages, and looking at our non-technical systems, our operational systems. How do you onboard? How do you offboard? How do you reboard volunteers?
Right,
Um,
right.
and one of the biggest things, in addition to all of these are big things, but on my list is telling the volunteer story. I don't even know if you all know how unique and dynamic and incredible your story is as volunteers. Volunteers here lead teams, they lead entities, they lead initiatives. They do significant work. And what I found in just my limited research in these last couple of years is that, and we're not the only ones they do it for.
Oh,
So we're trying to figure out how to clone all of these incredibly
right,
amazing
right.
contributors to our work. And so we're working on, and Tara's a great part of this as well, helping us to better tell this story, because the AARP success story is a volunteer success story. The way that we have been able to advance our mission to achieve goals on the advocacy and so many other fronts is because of the powerful force of our volunteers. So we really want to get out this story of impact, not just for those around the enterprise, but for those beyond our walls, to learn just how amazing our volunteers are and what they can learn from us. And quite frankly, we can learn from them as well.
Right. And you're right. The part of the Roost News story is to tell the stories of the many volunteers, of the many staff. And that's what we work towards, is making sure that we go around to the different state offices and let them tell their story via the Roost News podcast. So thank you for that shout out for Tara, and that
thank
shout
you
out is for the Roost News too.
That's right.
I thank you for that, and a little bit more about short-term, long-term goals. And you brought up the leaders. I was fortunate to attend a couple of meetings for lead volunteers, as I think I call them work sessions. Are you planning, and not specifically on dates, but are you planning to continue with those type of work sessions for the leaders and staff?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, that's a part of our plan annually.
Mm-hmm.
And now that we are able to actually get together to do it, makes it even
Right.
that much
Yes, it
sweeter.
does.
So what we do is every year we pull together OVE team members as well as some volunteers to help us determine not only our operational work plan for the upcoming year, but more importantly, our strategic plan for the next few years out. As you know, the enterprise works on 3-year enterprise strategy plans, and we want to work in alignment with that. In fact, we are actually in the organization's enterprise-wide strategic plan. And so now that that's been determined, when we bring this group in, we will be working on those parallel paths of what should we focus on in a year and what should we focus on in the next 3 years. And we simply cannot do work about volunteers without including volunteers, right? We have to have you all be a part of the today, tomorrow, and forever in our work. And so that will be a regular process. We will make sure that we had to put it on pause once we were waiting to get finalization on where we were with the strategic planning process for the enterprise at large. But now that we know, it will resume, and we will be doing regular check-ins, because your volunteers, you all serve as our accountability partners. You make sure what we said we were going to do, we're going to do. So what those short-term growth goals look like are, obviously we want to grow, and we want to grow because we need to, right? There's a lot of great work going on, and again, we cannot do this work without the support of our volunteers. So we definitely want to grow in that space, and we are seeing that. We are seeing growth. We've almost doubled the number of new volunteers that have added, that have become new volunteers with us as compared to this time last year. And we want to make sure that that trend continues. And on the other side of that, we want to make sure that when they land, they're landing in meaningful roles in work. And so
Right.
we want to make sure we help identify some of those roles. And most importantly, support the states and all of our volunteer programs in receiving these new volunteers and making sure their experience is meaningful. And we want to do lots more around recognition. If you recall, you've seen a lot going on around that. We've been making all calls from our volunteers because, quite frankly, we can't do it enough to equal the
Right.
contributions you give to us, but we can certainly do more. And so we want to make sure that we're coming up with more recognition opportunities that are meaningful to you, not just that we think are great ideas,
Mm-hmm.
and making sure we do it in a more regular cadence so that you don't ever forget how much we truly appreciate all that you do, not simply for us, but for the 50 plus in your communities.
Right.
And then again, as I mentioned earlier, we're working on cleaning up our systems, modernizing our systems with a goal of just making it easier to volunteer with us and to stay with us, and even more importantly, grow and develop with us as volunteers.
Great, great. Well, with the volunteers listening, I know on behalf of them, I would just say thank you for what you all do for volunteers on a daily basis. Volunteers are appreciative, and that's one of the reasons they're sticking with AARP. But when we look at volunteers, if they staff and volunteers that are on board now, if they were in the community talking with individuals who say, you know, they've heard about AARP, and what are they for us? The insurance, it's more than just insurance. They hear certain things, but they're not really sure. How would you tell a staff member or a volunteer, sort of just in a short terms, how to approach someone who they may be interested in having to onboard as a volunteer? Any words of advice for them?
I always say when you're approaching anyone for who's interested in potential volunteering, first of all, to your point, you explain what AARP does. The beauty of AARP's brand, lots of people know what it does. To your point, it's a lot about insurance and discounts. But it is a neat opportunity when you approach individuals about volunteering that we provide this. But do you know that they support advocacy? Do you know that AARP is out in local, state, and national levels pushing for reduced, prescription drug costs, for making sure that voter engagement is key and forefront in education, know where to vote, how to vote. Do you know about these great things? And last but not least, do you know you can volunteer to support it all? And then kind of ask, what are your interests? What do you like to do? Because I assure you, we could probably find you a volunteer opportunity that meets those needs
Yes,
and passions.
yes.
We don't want to assume that because you're a retired accountant that you want to come in and do numbers. You may just want to come in and set up
Right,
table events
right.
and connect with people. So
Yes.
tell us what you like. Most importantly, tell us what you love, and we will do our best to align that with passions in our space. And try us. You don't have to come in and do a full commitment. Come to an event. Be
Good
a part
point.
of
Good
it.
point.
And then if you see it, which we know they're going to like it, we can move on from there. That is some of the beauty of the language of ladder of engagement. Again, something that Will and the amazing advisor team push all the time. Start at low level, entry level opportunity. And once we get them in, we sure it will grow. You all are living proof of that every day.
Right. Well, the other thing is, I have two, maybe three other topics, but I think we're going to put a pin in that. And
Oh,
hopefully you'll come back next year. Want to talk
if you'll
about
have me
some
back.
topics, Social Security, artificial intelligence, caregiving. Those are all topics that are important to AARP. But we're going to begin to bring closure to this program today and ask you, is there anything else that you would like to share that maybe we did not talk about as it relates to volunteerism?
Maybe not so much in that regard, but
Okay.
those of you who know me know I never miss an opportunity to say thank you. Thank you, Lillian, obviously, for
Thank
this and
you.
for all the things I do, because I know that list is really long for you in serving with AARP. And thank all the volunteers and those staff who support them, because again, it's your work is mission critical to what we do. And we don't take for granted that any given day you have options. You've got options with whom you can dedicate your time, talent, and even your treasure, but you choose us, and we do not take that for granted. And I just hope you know that we here at the Office of Volunteer Engagement are here at the behest of all of you. So please do not hesitate to reach out. As Lillian referenced, there are advisors for each of your states. If you reach out through your staff partner, if you have any questions or concerns or ideas, even more importantly, please let your staff partner know. They will let our advisors know. You know, if you have any other questions, concerns, or things you'd like to find out about, we have a volunteer helpline, and you can email us at volunteer@aarp.org, or you can reach out to me. I'm more than happy. Many of you know, if you email me, it may take a minute, but I promise I'll be getting right back to you to support you in any way that I can. And that's Becote Jackson at AARP.org. Just know that we are here for you. We are incredibly grateful to you, and I look forward to seeing more of you as I now can be out in community and support you more directly within your community. So thank you for everything.
Thank you. What a wonderful, wonderful story. What informative information that we can actually use. And that's what the podcast is about. We want to share with you, volunteers and staff, information that you can use. So we ask that you like us on our podcast, make comments, and anything else you would like to share in the comment section. Subscribe to our Roost News podcast on YouTube, as well as listen to us on your favorite player podcast. So until next time, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Lillian. Take good care all.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to quickly, stop it.